Imagine waking up on a freezing morning more than 50,000 years ago. The fire has almost burned out, your family is already packing to leave, and the herd they've been following is moving farther into the valley. You push yourself up, ready to follow them. Then a sharp pain shoots through your leg. You try again. Nothing. You can't stand, you can't walk. Today that would mean a trip to the hospital. But in prehistoric times there were no doctors, no medicine, and no one to call for help. Every day was a fight to survive. If you couldn't keep moving, would your family leave you behind? Or is everything we think we know about ancient humans completely wrong? The answer begins with one simple fact. For prehistoric humans, walking wasn't just a way to get around, it was life itself. Every meal depended on it. Hunting animals meant following tracks for miles across open land. Gathering berries, roots, and edible plants required constant travel. Fresh water wasn't waiting in a kitchen, it could be hours away. Even finding shelter often meant moving from one place to another as the seasons changed. If food disappeared, the group moved. If winter arrived, the group moved. If predators appeared, the group ran. Standing still wasn't an option. Now imagine trying to survive all of that without being able to walk. A single injury could change everything. A twisted ankle from stepping into a hidden hole. A broken leg after falling from a rocky slope. A crushed foot during a dangerous hunt. Even a deep cut that became infected could leave someone unable to travel. Modern medicine has made us forget just how dangerous these injuries once were. Today, a broken bone usually heals in a cast. Thousands of years ago, the same injury could become a death sentence. If you couldn't keep up with your group, you faced dangers from every direction. You could starve because you couldn't hunt or gather food. You could die of thirst before reaching the nearest stream. You could freeze during the night because collecting firewood was impossible. And perhaps most terrifying of all, you became an easy target. Lions, hyenas, wolves, and other predators didn't need to outrun the fastest member of the group. They only needed the slowest. For a long time, scientists believed they already knew what happened next. The injured were abandoned. The weak were left behind. Only the strongest survived. It seemed like the brutal logic of prehistoric life. After all, carrying someone who couldn't walk would slow everyone down. It would consume precious food and energy. In a world where every calorie mattered, helping one injured person could put the entire group at risk. At first glance, the conclusion seemed obvious. But then archaeologists began uncovering ancient skeletons that didn't fit this story. Some belonged to people with severe injuries. Others had disabilities that would have made walking extremely difficult. Yet these individuals hadn't died immediately. They had survived for years. Some even reached old age. That discovery forced scientists to ask an astonishing question. If these people couldn't survive alone, who kept them alive? And why would anyone risk their own survival to save someone who could no longer keep up? The answers were buried inside caves, ancient bones, and archaeological sites that would rewrite one of our oldest assumptions about human history. The first clues didn't come from ancient stories or cave paintings. They came from bones. Bones have a remarkable ability to tell a story long after the people themselves are gone. A healed fracture, worn joints, or signs of disease can reveal not only how someone lived, but sometimes how they survived against impossible odds. One of the most famous discoveries came from a cave in present-day Iraq. There, archaeologists uncovered the remains of a Neanderthal now known as Shanidar 1. At first glance, it looked like another prehistoric skeleton, but a closer examination revealed something extraordinary. His left arm had been badly damaged, possibly so severely that part of it was missing or unusable. One of his legs had healed after a serious injury, leaving him with a noticeable limp. He also showed signs of arthritis, limited vision in one eye, and hearing loss. These weren't injuries that happened shortly before death. They had healed years earlier. Despite living with multiple disabilities, Shanidar 1 reached an age that was considered old for his time. That raises an unavoidable question. How? A man with limited mobility, poor hearing, and reduced vision would have struggled to hunt large animals, travel long distances, or defend himself from predators. Yet he survived. The simplest explanation is also the most remarkable. He wasn't surviving alone. Others in his group must have shared food, offered protection, and accepted the burden of caring for someone who could no longer contribute in the same way he once had. For many researchers, Shanidar became one of the straight pieces of evidence that Neanderthals practiced long-term care. And Shanidar wasn't the only surprise. Thousands of kilometers away, in what is now the country of Georgia, Archaeologists made another discovery that pushed this behavior much further back in time. At the site of Dmanisi, they found the skull of an early human who had lost nearly every tooth. At first, that might not sound remarkable, but imagine trying to survive in prehistoric times without teeth. Raw meat would be almost impossible to chew. Many roots and wild plants would be too tough to eat. Even dried foods could become a challenge. Yet this individual didn't die immediately after losing those teeth. The bones show they lived for years afterward. Someone was almost certainly helping. Perhaps food was cut into smaller pieces. Perhaps meat was pounded until it became soft. Or perhaps others simply shared the easiest foods to eat. We can't know exactly how they did it, but surviving alone would have been extremely unlikely. That discovery is nearly 1.8 million years old. If that interpretation is correct, caring for vulnerable members of the group may have begun far earlier than scientists once believed. Then came more evidence. In Spain, a site known as Cima de los Huesos, or the Pit of Bones, revealed ancient human relatives with healed fractures and other serious injuries. Once again, the pattern repeated itself. People who should not have survived somehow did. One skeleton on its own could be dismissed as unusual luck. Two might still be coincidence. But discoveries from different places, different time periods, and even different human species begin to tell the same story. This wasn't an isolated event. It may have been part of prehistoric life. Of course, that doesn't mean every injured person survived. Far from it. Life remained incredibly dangerous. A severe infection could still be fatal. A broken leg during an Ice Age winter could still mean death. Some groups simply may not have had enough food to support someone who couldn't travel. Others may have been forced to keep moving no matter what. The archaeological evidence doesn't tell us that everyone was cared for. It tells us something much more realistic. Some were. And that alone changes the story of early humanity. The next mystery is even more fascinating. If helping an injured person required extra food, extra effort, and extra risk, why do it at all? What did prehistoric humans gain by protecting someone who could no longer walk? That question may reveal one of the greatest survival strategies our species ever developed. Why would anyone risk their own survival for someone who couldn't walk? At first, it doesn't seem to make sense. Prehistoric life was already a constant struggle. Food was never guaranteed. Winters could last for months. Predators lurked beyond the firelight. Every extra mouth to feed meant fewer resources for everyone else. So why help? The answer may lie in one of humanity's greatest advantages: cooperation. Unlike most animals, humans rarely survived alone. Even the strongest hunter depended on others. Someone made stone tools. Someone gathered plants. Someone watched the children. Someone kept the fire alive. Survival wasn't the achievement of one person. It was the achievement of the group. In that world, an injured individual wasn't always useless. An older hunter might no longer chase deer across the plains, but he could still shape spear points or teach younger hunters where herds migrated each season. An experienced gatherer might recognize poisonous plants that others couldn't. A parent recovering from an injury could still help care for children inside the camp. Knowledge was a resource just as valuable as strength. And unlike food, it couldn't be replaced overnight. Scientists also think helping others may have increased the group's own chances of survival. Imagine two hunters setting out together. One slips on wet rocks and breaks a leg. If everyone abandons him, the message is clear. Anyone could be next. But if the group helps him recover, something important happens. Everyone gains a better chance of surviving future injuries. In other words, caring for others wasn't just an act of compassion. It could also be a practical survival strategy. That doesn't mean prehistoric humans were always kind. The archaeological evidence doesn't support that conclusion. Some injured people almost certainly died before help could arrive. Others may have been impossible to save. And during famines or brutal winters, even close family members may have faced heartbreaking choices. Nature remained unforgiving. What the evidence does show is something more powerful. Humans were capable of cooperation even when it came at a cost. That ability may have changed the course of our evolution. It's important to separate what we know from what we believe. We know that ancient skeletons show healed injuries and long-term survival. We know that some individuals lived with disabilities that would have made independent survival extremely difficult. From that evidence, many researchers conclude that family members or their wider group must have provided food, protection, or other forms of care. Exactly how they did it remains unknown. Wooden stretchers, leather slings, or carrying techniques would almost never survive for tens of thousands of years, so archaeology cannot confirm the details. Those reconstructions are informed by logic and comparison, not direct proof. But the overall picture is becoming clearer with every new discovery. The story of prehistoric humanity isn't simply the story of the strongest. It's also the story of those who refuse to leave others behind. So let's return to where we began. You're sitting beside a fading fire. Your leg is badly injured. You try to stand. You can't. The group is preparing to leave. For a moment, it feels like the end. Then someone picks up your spear. Another packs extra food. A family member kneels beside you and helps you to your feet. You don't walk alone. Whether you were supported under your arms, helped one careful step at a time, or carried for part of the journey, one thing becomes clear. Your survival now depends on everyone else. That simple act of helping may have echoed across thousands of generations. Because long before humans built cities, wrote books, or crossed oceans, we learned that sometimes the strongest way to survive was to make sure no one faced the journey alone. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into our ancient past, don't forget to subscribe to Tiny Ancestors for more evidence-based stories about the lives, struggles, and discoveries that shaped humanity long before history was written.